on the stage. So, hi, I'm Wenceslas and I'm from Scape. So, today we have a panel of our team managers from various local esports organizations that will be discussing on how to pursue a career as a professional esports athlete. And the things that we'll be looking into will be like the motivations into going into a professional esports career. We'll also be looking at, a day in life of the esports athlete. How do you balance if you're part-time esports professional? How do you balance school and parental expectations? And also like from the managerial standpoint, what do they look for in an esports athlete? So without further ado, I'm going to be introducing our panel, starting with Benjamin, who is the regional operations manager at RSG. Hi Ben, maybe you can tell us more about RSG and yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Ben. I'm the regional manager for esports at RSG. Before that, I was initially a professional Fortnite player for the same team as well. Maybe some of you may not know that. But after I retired 2 years ago, I moved into team management and I've been there ever since. So now my role is very much of managing teams and players and really improving our performance in the esports front. Yep.
Thank you, Ben. Next up, we have Stefan, who's from EVOS, and he is the business development lead at EVOS. So, Stefan, can go ahead.
Yeah, hi guys, my name is Stefan. Apart from being the business development lead for EVOS, I also manage the EVOS Singapore's Mobile Legends division, and also I was the former captain and player for the team. Yeah.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ryan from Emerge Esports. He's the esports executive at Emerge Esports. Ryan, go ahead.
Hi, yeah. So I've been at Emerge for 6 months now. We are a relatively new organization, and yeah, we are new to the scene, but we hope to make a statement here. And previously, I had a background in competitive FPS, and also currently I'm managing the MLBB team as well as the Kingsman Valorant team.
Thank you, Ryan. Finally, we have Joseph from Team Flash. He's the esports manager at Team Flash. Joseph.
Hello everybody, my name is Joseph. I used to be a professional FIFA player and I've played in China before for Newbie and also PSG LGD. Currently, I'm in Team Flash and I'm in charge of the esports divisions in Singapore and Thailand.
All right. So the question here today that we'll be looking at is how to pursue a career as an esports athlete. And I think before that, maybe what's the definition of an esports athlete to you guys? Maybe you can start with Ben.
I think for an esports athlete, it's a bit different compared to your regular gamer. I think a lot of them mix up the two. Esports athlete, for one, they are expected to perform at a different level, and they are required to train like rigorously. That they don't really play the game just for fun. Yeah, I think that's really the main difference.
So for you, right, Ben, you transition from being a professional esports player into the back end. So has that expectations of esports player changed when you were a professional player and compared to when you went to the back end?
I think in terms of your question is again, sorry.
Yeah, so that means has the perspective of being an esports athlete changed from you when you were an esports athlete and as compared to you at the back end of the esports?
I think in terms of expectations, you mean like 2 years ago and now, is it? Now
Yeah.
that I'm managing teams, the expectation is still the same. I think it's just more demanding because there's more and more people involved in esports now, because the talent is really getting stronger and all. So I think competition has increased. Other than that, I think pretty much still the same. Expectation-wise, still have to commit full time. Still have to really commit a lot of your time to really train and really to be able to perform. I think a lot of the people here on this panel can really relate to that.
Thank you, Ben. What about you, Stefan? What's your
Uh,
definition of a professional esports athlete?
Yeah, I think it's very much like your traditional sports. I mean, you can play badminton for leisure, but if you're professional and you have to represent organization or even the country, yeah, it is a lot of time put into training, and you have to be one of the best. Yeah, for the to be considered professional esports.
So for you, right, there was this period where you were juggling your studies and playing full-time MLB. What was it like? What made you continue, putting in all this effort into competitive gaming when you still had to juggle your studies?
Yeah, I think when you are studying, you actually have the luxury, especially in university, where I think a lot of it is how did I juggle was that there wasn't really a fixed uh, say per se, a time to study. I can in my own time or maybe schedule it so that I can accommodate playing professionally for MLBB. So that's that includes like skipping lectures and rewatching the replays. Yeah, stuff like that. And yeah, that's mainly how I.
What about you, Ryan? You said that you were in competitive FPS before. So what made you go into competitive FPS?
Well, honestly, it just happened by chance, and I found that like I found it very rewarding. Like the more time I put in, the better I got. So I think that goes to a lot of athletes, so not just esports athletes, but like athletes in general. Like they get the very rewarding feeling that the more time you invest and the more hard work you put into your game, and then that's where the fruits of labor start to pay off. And that's one of my main motivations for even having this interest in the esports scene. Yeah.
Can you elaborate more on what you mean by rewarding?
Right. So like as the more time you put in, you really start to feel like you're getting better at the game, or you're getting more involved with your team. The teamwork mechanics, the dynamics between you and your friends and your teammates start to get better, and it's really a rewarding feeling. And I think we're gonna make this comparison a lot, but like if let's say you compare it to a traditional sport, you'll also be able to feel the same the same level of success, the same level of accomplishment when you put in so much hours into something you enjoy and something you're passionate about. Yeah.
So what about you, Joseph? You play competitive FIFA. What were your initial motivation going into competitive FIFA?
Basically, I love the game, and also I have a very different perspective about competitive gaming and also a professional esports player. For me, a professional esports player is where someone can and makes a living out of playing games through your salary, through your prize money and everything. And you can actually put food on the table and support yourself from there. I mean, if you cannot earn money out of it, how can you call yourself a professional esports player, right? I think that would be a competitive player instead. I mean, if everyone who is taking part in a tournament calls themselves a professional esports player, then basically everyone is a professional esports player. So to me, I think there's a fine line between a competitive player and also a professional esports player. But I mean, that's my perspective about it.
Yeah, I like that you draw this definition between the two. I mean, for a lot of people out there, they start calling themselves a professional player once they take part in one or two tournaments, even though it's like a very small tournament, and this inflates the idea that everyone is a professional esports athlete when there's so many other things that goes into being one. So with that being said, I'm going to throw the question back to Ben. What is building on to what Joseph said, what is the main difference between the competitive and professional esports players in your opinion?
The main difference I would say is like also I do agree with Joseph as well. Like competitive player just mainly means you are just taking part in competitions, right? It's very generic. But to be a professional, you have to be paid doing it, and the performance expected out of you is also different. The demand is very different. And I think you have a career built around this aspect. That means you will have to have a bunch of other things into consideration, because as a professional esports, apart from these competitions, you have to deal with things such as like sponsors, engagement, your social following, your influence and all that. You have to look to build all these aspects in your career, just very much like your job. You don't just do one domain, you have multiple buckets you have to really carry. So I think that for me would be the difference.
Yeah, I like that you talk about having to deal with media, your media influence and stuff like that. So with that being said, right, Stefan, maybe you can tell us more. What is it like in the day of life of a professional esports athlete? Because you guys, for Evos, I know that you just taken part in a tournament recently, and you guys have media day and this kind of thing. So maybe you can go in depth.
Yeah. So actually, it's a bit different from I would say from other regions because in Singapore there are a lot of other commitments. So unfortunately, we can't be like other teams in other regions where they pick in the gaming house. They have a full day schedule of be it training, stuff like that. But so, so apart from all the work commitment, I think most of us in general should have have until the evening, all the way to evening to off for work or school. Then after I think that's when it comes in. After dinner to maybe past midnight, that is mainly all that we have for Singaporeans. Train to discuss, strategy to review. Yeah, so that is the the schedule when it's nearing the tournament days. When it's off season, I think it's understandable by the organization to let us deal with a lot of our other commitments. Yeah.
Okay, so what you just told us about is really just like the practice hours and things like that. But what about social media as an esports athlete? What is it like to how important is social media as an esports athlete? Their presence. Maybe Ryan can answer this.
Yeah, sure. So as a manager, I always encourage as much as possible all my players to have some form of social media presence, be it like streaming or just regular uploads on their social media updates for their fans. And I feel like this is a very complementary part of a professional player's repertoire, basically. So like other than of course the basic income that a player would earn, like this is also a very viable secondary form of income, especially in a country like Singapore, where yeah, as you know, standards are living of living are quite high, and like wages are quite high as well. So there's always this like certain how would I put it, certain expectations set by players on how they want to how they want to generate income. So this is definitely something that professional players have to look out for when it comes to social media presence. So when it comes to things like sponsors, that's when they really look at your numbers on your social media, and that's how you get sponsorships and you get engagements and things like that. So this is definitely, I would say, a very important aspect of today's modern professional esports player.
Yeah, so we talk about how social media allows esports athletes to have a source of income. I'm going to redirect the question back to Joseph, who talked about how professional players as a career, you need to be able to feed yourself. Maybe you can talk on like how do professional players actually earn a living.
I think firstly, right, as you start off as a competitive player, uh, you have to get noticed first. So once you get noticed, you're so good, then organization will pick you up. The organization pick you up. I would assume that if your game title is relevant enough, you'll be paid maybe a part-time salary or full-time salary, whichever it goes. And then from there, like what everyone has mentioned, online presence. So through streaming, through your Instagram posts, you can do sponsors, you can do any activations. So that's where another source of income comes in as well. And lastly, obviously, your prize money. I mean, for Stefan, he has been playing ML, he's taken part in all the big tournaments. I'm sure he knows what I mean as well. So I think mainly it's this three form of um, monetary rewards.
Yeah, there's one point that you talked about, which is the relevancy of the game. I'm gonna put it out to the four of you. If anyone want to talk about this, what is a relevant game? How do you define relevancy in our local context? Yeah, maybe just Stefan, will you want to answer this? how do you define a relevant game?
I think the relevant game really money money average. I think the game publishers will have the numbers, and it's quite evident that for now, I think mobile is probably the most relevant game for mobile, and probably relevant for I mean word of mouth and also the numbers. So, just how strong for following the games have. Yeah.
What about Ben? What do you think about this term of relevancy?
I think for a game to be relevant, right, I think just based on hard facts, it will be how much people actually watch the game. I think viewership, if let's say you really look at, if you talk about facts, and instead of just, because everybody has they want their own game to be relevant, right? It's like, if I play Fortnite, I want Fortnite to be the most relevant game out there. But in terms of whether whether it's relevant in your region to your sponsors, right? Because that's Joseph's point as well. It really is the amount of people that actually view and play the game and talk about the game and engage around the game, because that's what that's what sponsors care about. Yeah, I would say viewership.
Okay, so I'm going to just put it out again. So does that mean that if, let's say, I'm interested in a game that I'm very good at, and I actually like top the leaderboard and everything, but because my country or my region, there's no viewership on that, then it's not practical for me to become a professional esports athlete for that game. I put it back to Joseph.
Personally, I think that if your game isn't popular in your region, but you're so good, I think there's still a shot at making it. I mean, it's just like, for example, like what Benjamin said, Fortnite. Fortnite is such a huge game. It's one of the biggest game in the whole esports scene. But unfortunately, in our region, there's just no community. There just isn't any tournaments. There just isn't any prize money, and it's quite sad here. But you think about it in another way, the moment you step out of the country, you head over to Europe. I think if Benjamin was there and given an opportunity to play pro there, things would be so much different. So there's still a chance of making it. It's just whether how you put yourself out there to be picked up by the overseas teams, actually. That's how I feel.
So building on that question, how do you build yourself a presence that you get picked up by esports organizations? Yeah. Ryan?
Right. So yeah, this is really very subjective, but I feel in general, it really depends on the game. So like as you mentioned earlier, if the game is a relatively less developed game in the region or has a smaller scene, then of course your name will stand out more, right? When it comes to that aspect. But if your region is generally unnoticed in the international scene, then it's going to be quite difficult for you to put like your name on the international map, right? Like, because if you take the previous example, Fortnite, how is a Singaporean going to get his name to, like, let's say a top European or North American team? It's going to be quite a uphill challenge. But what I can think of is immediately have contacts in the game, in the industry, right? Build relationships with other players in other regions, have some social media presence, maybe start streaming, things like that. What gets a player noticed internationally? Yeah, I would say that's the first step to being noticed. But if you look at a game that is more developed locally, for example, I can take maybe ML for MLBB for Singapore's example. It's really just about playing with the professionals and like getting them to notice that you're talented there and like you have potential, and that's where people like organizations start to notice you and pick you up. Yeah.
What about the other team managers? What do you look for in a potential individual that you want to pick up? Ben?
I think for players, what I really look out for is the confidence of the player. I think I really want the player to be very confident. I think that says a lot. Also, his ability to handle pressure. I think that's really important as well. I mean, the obvious one is definitely mechanical skills as well. The more mechanically talented you are, the higher chance that you can hold your own against the pros. So lastly, I also look for teamwork skills. I think being able to work in a team environment, especially for those team-based games like ML, right, where you have to work with 4 other individuals to achieve your goal. I think having a strong ability of teamwork is important to succeed. Yeah. So those are the 4 things I really look out for.
Yeah, I think these are certain values that are not easy to get inculcated in some individuals. I'm going to throw this question over to Joseph. So Joseph, you say you play FIFA. So I mean, for you, if you will look at FIFA scene itself, it's an individual game, right? So what are the values or what are you looking for in your individuals that you want to pick up for, let's say, your team?
So basically, FIFA mainly focus on an individual game, but at times there are 2v2 or even 3-player team tournaments. But ultimately, what I look at is talent. I feel that if you have the mechanical skills, you have the talent, it's something that cannot be trained. I mean, attitude-wise, people can change. Teamwork, it can be built. All these factors can really be groomed. But talent, someone can just play the game 12 hours a day, 12 hours a day for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. He can still be better at the game. But someone who is toxic, who tilts in game, who doesn't shows right attitude, with the right culture, the right grooming, I believe that the player can grow from there. So if let's say I'm building a team of 3 or even just an individual, I always look for talent first, no matter what. Because at the end of the day, in a team game, if you pick 2 players who are experienced but the talent is not there, you might have a good team. You can have a 7 upon 10 team, but you know that to have a 10 upon 10 team, no matter what, you need 3 talented players. That's how I see it.
This is a bit interesting. So you're talking about how you would pick talent over like attitude and stuff like that. Does the other team managers agree? Stefan, would you pick talent over attitude?
Yeah, also Joseph, I agree with him. So when we have our open trials, we actually have to shortlist because over a few hundred entries and I think the first criteria would be for me personally, I would look at the rank points. So the idea behind this is actually if your rank points are at a certain number and it's high enough, means you have constant exposure against semi-pro or even pro players in your rank games, even if you have no experience. So I think that is really very important. If you have the talent mechanically and you that is definitely the first looking at.
Okay, so with that being said, what about Ben? What do you think? Will you pick talent over, attitude and stuff like that?
Okay, so for me, I think talent is like the degree cert to the job interview, right? I think you're expected to have talent and a certain level of performance, right? If you're considering to be a pro player, so I think that is really like the bare minimum they need to have. I think what really sets you apart from other players is really your attitude and your drive. I think, don't get me wrong, I don't expect all the players to be like, oh, like, yes, sir, sergeant kind of thing, like Army NS style, like really, you say what, then you manage what. Because when it comes to talent, you come with ego, right? And then when you have some amount of ego, it comes with confidence. It's it's a whole package. You can't get one without the other. So in terms of that, what really sets you apart is how you have the right attitudes, have the right drive to really fit well with the team. If let's say 4 ego guys come together and can work well, then yeah, it's more about fitting with the rest of the team. Yeah, and how it really gels together. I think there's a magic to that. And really finding that magic is what I think all of us here is looking for. Yeah.
Okay, so actually in 2019, that was the first time, SEA Games, had the esports representation. And, for athletes, it's more than just being a competitive player, right? You're technically representing an organization and representing for the nation also. So my next question would be then is what then is expected, what is expected of your athlete, of your team. We're going to throw the question back to Ryan.
So just to clarify your question, you mean like the expectations I have for my players, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I think the esports scene is constantly evolving, and there are increasing expectations for players these days, right? If you look at traditional sports, it's also shifting. Like many years ago, you wouldn't see like big sponsorship deals and brands like that. So for what I feel is a basic level of expectation would be to have a presentable attitude and presentable front. So like you can't go into public and be seen as like a bad person or a very toxic individual. Things like that are what kind of turns people away. So like be it sponsors or like any other teammates. These are what turns people away from your team, from your organization. So I feel like what I expect basically in my players are a basic level of decency. Yeah, and yeah, just to tie in a bit to the previous topic, personally, I would feel that a basic level of talent is obviously expected, similar to what Ben mentioned. But of course, when it comes to, let's say, a team game, for example, like Valorant, it really boils down to how well the team works together at that level of play. Because, of course, as a professional player, you're expected to have talent. It's not so much a trade-off level, It's more of like you're expected to have a basic level of talent, and then from there, hard work and attitude is what puts you apart from every other player. So, yeah, in terms of expectations, I would expect these values in my players as well.
Okay, so what about the other teams? What do you all expect of your players minimally in terms of the way that they present themselves in public? Joseph?
I think just like everyone else, I believe that you have to have the right attitude. You don't go around to make some stupid comments or remarks about any other issues. Obviously, you have to groom yourself well, look good, discipline wise as well. So you just don't go into any rank games and start scolding people, that kind of thing. And during interviews, that kind of thing, you will always manage how to talk. You get what I mean?
For the other teams, do you guys actually have media training for your players? Stefan?
Yeah, actually, we do not have at all. I think from my own perspective, just do the very first one, the very first year I had, I think I was, I started a lot. I think it just gets better over time. I think I would advise maybe like try to craft some political right answers for example. Maybe shoot things off their mouth without thinking. Yeah, that's basically it.
What about you, Ben?
In terms of media training, is it?
Yep.
I think for the most part, these players have been exposed to quite a lot of media questions, a lot of interview questions, especially those post-match questions. So they are quite acclimatized to it. But for those bigger interviews and those newer players, right, we do have a PR team that actually helps them and run through the question to them and give them some sample answers that they can actually bank on. Because a lot of players, when they are in front of cameras, they are quite camera shy in the beginning. But once they start to warm up, once they start to actually get used to the environment and used to these questions, then they will more or less be able to answer and hold their own. So yeah.
Okay, so another thing is for esports athletes and gaming itself, right? A lot of these players are pretty young. So for these players, right, they are still schooling. How do you balance school and parental expectations? I'm gonna throw the question first to Stefan, because I know that you were juggling your uni at the same time when you were competing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so actually in the upcoming season my team has a 16-year-old player, a fresh player, and yeah, I think with regard to the parent side of things, if needed, I think managers like ourselves have to step in and try to explain to them how the competition will work, how the schedule will be like for training and stuff. And I think most importantly is trying to find a middle ground where they can do both, and it's definitely doable to study and also play competitive. Because I feel like from my experience, I think I could have done better in both. Yeah, there's still room. There's still room, just that I'm a bit lazy and I need a rest. Yeah, so yeah, that's about it.
What about Joseph? I know that a lot of FIFA players are also pretty young, right? So, are there how do you handle like parents' expectations when they ask you like, they tell you things like, "Oh, my son is always playing games." So, how do you set a schedule for them or?
I think one important aspect is communication. It's all about communicating between the player and their parents, and how do you work through this triangle. I think for us, Singapore, fortunately, there are really many great examples. I mean, Stefan is one. Our team has Amran and Alif. So basically, players who studies well and at the same time they play the game well and they manage to go overseas for tournaments and do well, that kind of thing. There are so many examples that show that it is possible to juggle between studies and at the same time do well in esports. So it's more of communication with the parents, and then we can work out a schedule with them. So maybe they do finish their homework and what are the hours they play, and we make sure that when do they sleep, that sort of things. When is their exams? When are the tournaments? I think ultimately it really depends on the player itself also. How much do they want it? If they really want it, you won't be lazy. You will just study when you need to study. You will just stream when you want to stream, and everything will just work out.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned the level of drive that the players need to, sacrifice for certain things to get both aspects of their life done. So what do you all do if a player is actually unable to manage their studies? Have you all benched them before, or how do you manage with that? I'm going to throw the question to Ben.
I think fortunately I have not had a player who forsake his like really couldn't handle his studies and then the parents come and complain. Fortunately, I have not had that situation yet. I'm pretty sure down the road I'll bump into one. But in terms of that, it's like what Joseph mentioned. It's like communication to the parents. I think it's about also shifting their perspective. Because most parents feel that when their child is gaming and all that, they're doing something unproductive, right? But if let's say you really shift that perspective, it's just like balancing any other part-time job while you're at school or while you're holding a job. Without proper time management and discipline, one of these aspects was bound to be affected. But also, balance doesn't always guarantee meeting one's expectation on each of these aspects. So it really is about the person's self-discipline as well as how much he or she really wants it, like what Joseph mentioned.
Yeah, I actually like all the values that you guys are bringing up, discipline, how much you guys actually want, the drive. So, Ryan, have you experienced such cases with your players?
Fortunately, not yet. Yeah, but I feel like really it all ties back down to, again, the attitude of the players and their values, right? If they're driven enough, if they're mature enough to manage their time well and not get distracted by distractions, and it really helps in the long run. And one way that I feel like we can manage these. Of course, I have young players on my team as well. 17-year-olds still studying. I feel like my team is actually really helpful in that sense. Like for my ML team, for example, is like recently I think one of them had a test coming up and they were actually working on some problems together, like math problems. So yeah, it's really the environment that sets the team apart, like yeah, it's just a really helpful like family vibe that we try to promote here. And yeah, it's really great in that aspect. It's really heartwarming to see.
I want to touch on environment. How do you guys, build this environment for your players to thrive? I'm going to throw this question to Joseph. Yeah.
I think that the whole organization, the culture from top down is very important. I mean, if your boss, isn't supportive or whatever of the players' parents or the managers ourselves, we lack let's say we lack the human touch. We cannot understand our players. We cannot be friends with them, bros with them. There's no family attitude, which is something I believe Evos believe in. It's very hard to build something from build the right culture, if you get what I mean. I think it's very important to really treat your players just like your own brothers, just like a family. Communicate with them, know what they need, know what they want, and you try to help them. And obviously, in return, they will try their best to fight for you in the tournaments, and that's where you get your returns. That's what I believe in.
What about Stefan? Joseph just like referred to you guys earlier on.
Yeah, I think likewise like Ryan in Emerge, I think is it Fast and Furious over there? Like family, I think it's somewhat the same over here. I mean our CEO, Evolve CEO, he always have frequent meals with us, even the players, and then he speaks to us as if we are friends. And yeah, I think it's very very different, and it just makes us a lot comfortable, and we in a way we feel like more of a family than a team, and we strive to work towards our goals together. Yeah.
And finally, Ben.
In terms of building an environment for them to thrive, I firmly believe in a proper system for them, meaning in terms of training schedules, being able to really manage their already very little time, because most Singaporean players, I'm sure Sol can really relate to this, Stefan can really relate to this, is like we are juggling multiple things at a time. So having a proper training schedule and making sure that things flow while they're balancing a lot of things in their lives is very important. And also a good team environment and energy, I think that's important as well, to make sure that the 5 players can really work together and facilitate that process. Also, we invest in coaches to help them improve their performance and to really point out the mistakes that they themselves are not able to see. So yeah, I think those are some of the few essentials to building a good team environment.
So for you to become a professional esports athlete, what are the questions that you guys actually answered for yourself before you all became a professional athlete? So like what were the considerations that you guys thought about before you all become decide to go full time, or like decide to like commit everything into this? I'm gonna throw the question to Joseph.
So for me, I come from a very traditional and conservative family. I am not very well to do, but I just come from a very average family. My mother has the mindset where I have to find an 8 to 5 job, and then after that I work and I just get married. She hates it when first time when I told her that I'm going overseas to play for tournaments. And then I remember when I ORD, I left army. I flew to China right away to play lah. So she was not happy with it. She thinks that I should continue my studies, that kind of thing. So it was really hard and really tough. But over time, I mean, she doesn't really care if I win or not. Even there was once even when I won more than 100,000, but she really didn't care at all. All she asked is, "So now what? Are you going back to school?" So there's really a lot of questions to be answered too. Like, it's hard for me lah, but I do believe that with how time passed and how the direction of esports is, doing better and better, I think it's easier for parents to understand more. I mean, all of us here, we set an example in a sense where we are all players who aftermath became a manager. So there's actually a lot of things you can do aftermath. You can become a coach, you can become a manager, you can do content, you can do so many things. So after your career ends as a player, right, or you choose to end it, there's actually so many avenues to explore. You can even be a production crew, you can even do events. There's really so many things to be done in Singapore. So I think as of now, it'll be easier for a kid to convince his or her parents that there's much more to esports than just playing competitively for prize money lah. That's how I see it.
Yeah, there was a lot of smirks earlier on when you talked about managing your communication with your mom. Did the rest of you have like any similar experiences, Stefan?
Yeah, I mean what Joseph mentioned was typically the Asian parents, right? Yeah, initially when I started playing, I think it's also the same. There's constant nagging. Do you even have time to study? Why are you playing so much? Let me go overseas. Yeah, stuff like that. I think in time, my mom's views changed because I think there are more events and international events, and she saw the scale of it, especially SEA Games, and I was honored to be on a few newspaper articles, and yeah, that really changed her mindset of things.
Yeah, a lot of these are the cause of like Asian values, right? We're very conservative, and especially in Singapore, it's all about the paper chase and stuff like that. Ryan, how have you had such experiences?
Personally, I've been quite lucky, in the sense where my family has been relatively supportive in whatever I do. So like they just tell me, focus on one thing, and then if you want to do something, then go for it. Yeah, but I have some players or some talents in that I've dealt with like more difficult parents, but in that aspect, like what previously mentioned by Joseph, like the scene today is really growing and has so much more career opportunities than you would expect. You can go to be a caster, you can go to be a manager. There's so many opportunities out there right now, and the and once you're able to convince like once you're able to convince the parents that it's actually a viable career option today, and it can actually net you money, like it's viable. So that's when hopefully their views start to change.
Yeah, I like how you talk about the different pathways after being a competitive player, and I believe Ben would have a lot to add to this.
Sorry, again?
Talking about the different pathways after being a competitive player, a professional player, maybe you can elaborate on what are the different routes that they can go after being a competitive player.
Wow. There is actually many because it really depends on your interest, right? If let's say you really love the game you're playing, but your head's not fast enough anymore already compared to those 16-year-old kids that just pick up the phone, right? You might want, but you have a lot of experience in the bank. So you might want to consider being a coach, right? With your experience and your knowledge about the game, you'll be able to coach the next generation of players. That's one career path. Alternatively, if let's say you are really like a father figure in the team and you really work well with people and you really like to interact with strangers and really like to build things, then team management is probably for you. So there's multiple. Let's say you like the behind the scenes. You go to a studio, you see the tournament organizers like doing things behind the scene, and you see all these things very cool. And then you might want to consider TO, right, being a tournament organizer. So it really depends on your interest. And there's really a lot of ways out there, yeah.
Okay, so right now, perhaps you guys can give our viewers a word of advice. How on their pursuit of being a professional esports athlete. I'll go just one whole round. So we'll start with Joseph.
For me, I think the key element is obviously studies. Study well. You be so damn smart. If you tell your parents that you're so smart, they wouldn't bother you. They wouldn't bother you. You have all the free time in the world. You can just pursue what you want to pursue. Just play your games. Just be good at it. Ultimately, it's really studies. If your studies is not that great, your parents will come at you every day. You can be hardworking. You can spend 10 hours studying every day, but if it lacks the result at the end of the day, you still cannot have time to train your games. So how are you going to pursue your esports career? So and also while pursuing your esports career, what if you just keep losing? You don't have a full-time salary out of it. You don't win any prize money. That's where the safety net comes in. You have studies to support you. You can still find a job elsewhere while trying to pursue it as a part-time career or just out of hobby, just out of passion. So study is the most important for me.
Okay, Ryan.
Yeah, actually, I think my view is very similar to that of Joseph's. Like, you really need this safety net, especially in the local context, right? Because without education, without a basic education, it's gonna be really hard. If let's say your professional competitive career doesn't work out, then what are you gonna do then? Like, that's really, I think, what's on the mind of most parents that are concerned. Like, what's going to happen if this thing doesn't work out for my child? So when it comes to my players, really, I encourage them to put their studies first, even though it's not beneficial to me, lah. But yeah, but still, I rather see them develop as a person more than develop than just a player.
Do we have a differing opinion, Ben? What if the child is actually bad in their studies but good at games?
Well, I mean, your success in life is not determined by your grades, right? At the end of the day, there are multiple people out there who are bad in studies but also still succeed in life. So, if let's say you are really passionate about what you're doing, then yeah, go by all means, just go and pursue it. I mean, you may not have always the support of the people around you, but if you really strongly believe in something as a well thought out plan, there's no harm in trying.
Yeah, I like how you talk about having a well thought out plan. Can you elaborate on that? What is a well thought out plan?
So a well thought out plan, I would say, is whether like what we discussed earlier, whether the title that you are pursuing can it be pursued locally, right? Do you have the means to travel? If let's say you have to put yourself out there, you have to really consider a lot of these points that were covered previously. So if let's say you just joined, then you probably want to rewind back and then listen to some of the previous things that were brought up, and then yeah. So really, you just really look through and think about the considerations that you have to consider lah. Yeah.
Finally, Stefan.
Yeah, exactly of what Ryan and Joseph said, which is also exactly what I did. To please my parents, because yeah, I'm sure they'll be so happy that I managed to scrape through and compete. And yeah, it's really a safety net, and so in a way a very safe player. And I would want something to fall back on in case I'm not. In fact, I wasn't planning to go after my graduation with any sports related, but yeah, our CEO decided that he offered me a position, and I think it's an industry that I think I did and something I really love. Yeah.
All right, thank you guys. Right now, we will go into a session of Q&A. So if there's anyone in the audience that, you guys have any questions for any of our panelists, please go ahead and shoot it over to us. Yeah. But yeah, I realized that everyone is very filial to their parents. It's very important to please the parents first before you all chase your own career. So yeah. Okay, there's one question. Do you see esports teams pivoting to content creation as a major part of your monetization strategy instead of just relying on tournament winnings? Yeah. Joseph, anyone want to take this question?
For me personally, I believe so. I mean, it's very important to have a strategy where you not only just rely on tournament winnings. I mean, like what Ryan mentioned just now at the start, it's important to have your own streaming, your own social media numbers, your own influence. So if that's the case, we are more of building towards the path where players can also become a role model, influencers, that kind of thing. At the same time, there's also a way to give back to the community. Good examples can show that, like example for Stefan, he can study well, at the same time he can play the game well. Aftermath, he has this and that. And let's say if he does streaming, that kind of thing, it all is a cycle, like it all links up together. So I do believe that we shouldn't be just relying on tournament winnings. I mean, what if your player doesn't win? Then you are telling me that we cannot pay them? Where do we get the money from? That sort of thing.
Ben, do you want to add on to this?
For me, I think that I don't really think there will ever really be a shift in terms of monetization strategy into content, because I think it's very synergistic. because the tournament itself is a storyline, right? Your journey on how the team goes and all that. I think teams will just really ramp up their efforts in terms of content creation, their level of content creation, and really step up the production value of it, so that our fans and the people around us to support our teams can really enjoy it, and then from that it will create a bigger awareness. So yeah, I think that will be my point of view for it. Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question. How do you keep your players motivated during tough times? Stefan?
Yeah, I think how would I do that? I think mainly it's to remind them why they even started, and I think they will see the goal, the picture of the goal they had in mind. Yeah, I think that is one very good way to motivate my players. I haven't been my players actually because I yeah lah. So but that's how I really feel. Really, that goal that I'm striving to achieve, and I will work really hard.
What about Ben?
How to keep players motivated?
Yeah, during tough times.
I think for this, it's really case by case basis, because some players really just get burnt out, and I've seen that for firsthand. So sometimes really they just need you to understand that they can no longer continue. But for those that are really just feeling like overwhelmed and all that, sometimes taking a break will help. And really, I mean, all the counseling and really hearing them out and being their friend and really just understanding their perspective and sympathizing with them, that's a given. But sometimes really just telling them, put down the game and just play something else. Like play a different game. Like you don't ever forget that you're playing this to enjoy yourself. You're choosing this path because you enjoy it also. So yeah.
Yep. And to add on, like, yeah, burnout is a real thing that many players today face. It's definitely one of the big issues that most players face. And in terms of motivation, I feel like peer motivation is extremely important. Like when you play the game as a team, you lose or you suffer, you go through tough training as a team. That's the motivation should come from around you. And if let's say your teammates are unable to help with things like, I don't know, personal mental health, then maybe the organization can provide a solution, somebody to talk to, like maybe a therapist, which we do provide for our players. And yeah, I think mental health is extremely important in terms of player performance and longevity of a player as well. So this is something that we feel we can provide support to. This support should be provided to our players, especially during tough times. Yeah.
Yeah, I like how you touch on mental support. And would anyone want to touch on this? Like, how do you help your players through really stressful times? Because I know that some of them might be very stressed out and mentally they are not coping well. Joseph, are you able to answer this?
Sure, then. No, I'm kidding. So basically, I think it's important to understand your players, talk to them. I mean, every player, right? They have their own goal. Some play for the money, some play for the glory, some play because they just love the game. Everyone is different. So I think as a player myself, I've been through hard times before, alone in China, away from my family for 2 years, that kind of thing. So I think it's easier for me to relate to how the players feel. So for me, I think it's very important to communicate with them. If they play for the money, you obviously have to go towards that direction. They play for the love of the game. You obviously have to go to that direction as well. So basically, every player is different. Every approach is different to me. And I think what's key is human touch. I think a lot of esports organizations that I've been to before or who are here currently, currently in Singapore or overseas, everything is very business-minded. Everything is very transactional. There's really a lack of human touch. And I hope that for me, I can really relate to them and provide for them. And hopefully we can win together as a team.
Anyone want to add on to this topic on supporting your players in terms of mental support? Okay. I think with that we come to the end of this panel. I really want to thank all the speakers again and SGGA for this panel, and it's been very insightful. And hope you guys as viewers also enjoyed this panel. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.